Hey, this is Barry Gazard from Team Nice Realty. I'm a broker here in Atlanta, Georgia. And today I want to talk about what a can of beans and the buyer-broker agreement that you'll be asked to sign if you're going to work with a real estate agent or a realtor in Georgia or any of the other 50 US states. So a can of beans and the buyer-broker agreement, what do they have in common? Well, let's talk about a can of beans. So when you go and buy a can of beans at the supermarket, there are two prices you'll likely see. First of all, you'll see the price of the can of beans when it's on the shelf. So let's say this can costs $2. Then when you get to the checkout, sales tax will be added to that, and you will see a second price, which is the price you're going to pay at the checkout or the cashier. So that would be the price with the sales tax. So generally in the US, most states add the sales tax to the price of whatever you buy. So that's called an exclusive system because the price that's on the shelf excludes the sales tax. Now in some countries around the world, they use an inclusive system where the price of the product that you buy would include the sales tax, so you only see one price. It's already in the price. But here's the thing. Either way, when you buy that can of beans, you, the consumer, are going to pay the tax on that beans. In fact, you're going to pay all the costs that are involved in getting that can of beans onto the shelf. So let's rewind a bit and take a look at what those costs could be. So first of all, there's the farmer. He will grow the beans. I guess beans grow on a beanstalk, as in Jack and the Beanstalk, and he will harvest those. He is then going to send those or sell those to a processor, somebody like Bush's, who will then take those beans. They will wash them, clean them, and add some juices, probably cook them maybe. I'm not sure of the whole process. This one comes with bourbon and brown sugar. So they add some stuff to it and I'll put it in a can. And then that's got to get transported to the store where you're going to buy it. And that may go through a wholesaler or it may go direct. If it goes through a wholesaler, the wholesaler will take the costs involved up to that point and pay the processor. And there will be additional transport costs. Now, all those costs from the farmer through the transport, the processor, would be included in the price of the beans. And that's the price that you see there. So what is this to do with buying real estate? Well, when you buy a piece of land or a home or a piece of real estate, there are a whole bunch of costs that are included in the purchase price of that property. So let's say you buy a single family home. There's going to be the cost of the land. There's going to be the cost that originally were incurred in building that home. There's going to be sorts of holding costs, taxes, all sorts of things, architect costs that are included in that piece of land. But there are certain things that are going to be added to. And those things would be such as the closing costs, what you're going to pay a closing attorney or a title company, the financing costs if there's a mortgage involved, and of course, commissions as well. So obviously, agents have to get paid, and that commission is split between the agent and their broker. And those costs are either going to be included, in other words, the seller will pay those according to the closing statement, or they will be added after the price has been negotiated. But either way, just as with the can of beans, ultimately, it is the consumer, the buyer of that real estate, that is going to pay all those costs, whether they've been included in the purchase price and pre-negotiated, or whether they're going to be added to the contract price later on. So really, it's the same thing. The bottom line is that the buyer always pays those costs in reality. And on the closing statement, if the seller has agreed to include those in the purchase price, then those will be reflected as a seller's cost. But ultimately, as stated, the buyer really pays it. So that's really all that's involved with it. So nothing has really changed, especially here in the state of Georgia. For the last 20 odd years, as long as I've been involved, I think I've been selling real estate over 25 years in Georgia. We have signed a buyer-broker agreement up front, in fact, to represent a buyer in a transaction in an agency basis in the state of Georgia. Real estate law has required that we have a written agreement with our buyer, and generally agents use the Georgia Association of Realtors exclusive buyer-broker agreement, and that would have had that commission up front. So traditionally, the seller has included it in that purchase price. The only thing that's changed now is it may or may not. It's in fact always been that way, but it's going to be more common now to find that it sometimes will or won't be. So nothing has really changed there. Some agents, if they are realtors, may require you to sign a buyer-broker agreement before they even show you a property. That's something new, in fact, because that is part of the settlement that the National Association of Realtors agreed to with certain parties. So that's about it. Nothing really differently between buying a can of beans and buying some real estate. Ultimately, the buyer is going to pay those costs. And those are negotiable between buyer and seller, between buyer and agent. And the listing agent, of course, will negotiate their deal with the seller and may or may not include a provision to pay the buyer out of that commission, or the seller may agree to pay part of that or all of that. So that's it. Nothing really changed other than the fact that to look at a property, some agents, if they're realtors, are going to ask you to sign the buyer-broker agreement upfront. So this is Barry Gazard, Team Niche Realty. I hope that's helped you. The next video I'm going to do is going to be about whether you really even need a buyer's agent, and decide for yourself whether you should or should not hire a buyer broker when buying real estate in Georgia. Barry Gazard out.